You paid for something today without touching money. Maybe you tapped a card, maybe your phone, maybe you said a number out loud and it moved. You didn't think about it for even a second. But that little tap is the tail end of something 5,000 years old. And the money behind it was never a real object at all. So where did it come from and why is almost everything you learned about it wrong? Start with the story you already know. In 1776, a Scottish thinker named Adam Smith wrote the most famous economics book ever printed. He explained where money came from, and his answer became the version in your textbook. Once upon a time, people traded goods head to head. You had chickens. Your neighbor had shoes, so you swapped. The problem shows up the second you try it. You want shoes. The shoemaker doesn't want your chickens. Economists call this the double coincidence of wants. Someone clever then invented money to grease the whole thing. Barter first, money second, banks and credit last. Tidy and sensible and taught to almost everyone alive. There's one problem with that story. It never happened. For over a century, anthropologists went looking for Smith's world. They lived with communities that had no coins and watched how people traded before money arrived. And they never found it. Not one society ran on pure barter, not anywhere, ever. In 1985, a Cambridge anthropologist named Caroline Humphrey settled the question in one blunt, much-quoted line. No example of a barter economy has ever been described, and when barter did appear, it came after money. Rome fell, the coins dried up. People swapped goods because they'd lost the cash they were used to. Barter wasn't the childhood of money, it was the ghost of it. So if people weren't bartering before money, what were they doing instead? They were keeping track. In 2011, the anthropologist David Graeber gathered the evidence into one huge book called Debt. His argument flipped the textbook on its head. Coins and cash came late, bolted on top of debts that were already ancient. Before money, before coins, there was credit. You helped me bring in the harvest, and I owe you. I give you 3 goats, and you owe me back. Nobody counted it out on the spot. People remembered who owed what. Trust held it together. The first money wasn't a coin in your hand. It was a promise in someone's memory. The earliest money wasn't for buying dinner. It paid for the heaviest moments in a life. A marriage or a funeral. Or the price a family demanded for a relative you had killed. Once a village grew too big to hold every promise in memory, someone had to write them down. The oldest writing we have isn't poetry or prayer, it's receipts. 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, in cities like Ur and Uruk, scribes pressed debts into wet clay. So much grain owed here, so much silver owed there, they measured it all in a unit called the shekel. The word came from an old term meaning to weigh, because value there was a weight you set on a scale. 1 shekel of silver weighed about 8 grams, close to a month of a worker's pay. From a single ancient dynasty, over 100,000 of these tablets survive, packed with wages, loans, and debts, a whole economy of who owes whom baked into clay. The historian Marvin Powell said silver in Mesopotamia worked like our money, a way to measure and store value, and almost nobody carried the silver around. The tablet moved between people, the metal sat still. Money was a number in a ledger long before it was a coin in a fist. But writing debts down opened a new trap, because once a debt is permanent, it can grow. The Mesopotamians invented interest, and they charged it hard, often 20% a year on silver. A farmer borrowed grain in a bad season, the interest piled up, and soon he owed more than he could repay. He handed over his land. His wife and children went next. Then he sold himself into bondage, over numbers scratched in clay. Whole societies drowned in debt, nobody could escape, so the kings did something we would call insane today. Every so often, a new ruler canceled all of it. These clean slates were public celebrations, usually declared at the spring festival as a new reign began. They smashed the debt tablets, freed the bond slaves, and sent people home to their fields. The Sumerians had a word for that clean slate, a marji, a return to the way things began. Historians have counted around 30 of these cancellations between 2400 and 1400 BC. King Hammurabi ruled that no one could be held in debt slavery for more than 3 years. The first thing money made was debt. The first thing rulers made was mercy. But none of this was coins, yet to find the first real coin, travel to a kingdom called Lydia in what is now western Turkey. Around 600 BC, a river there ran thick with electrum, a natural blend of gold and silver. Legend said the water turned golden when King Midas washed his cursed touch away in it. Before coins, buyers had to weigh each lump of metal and bite it to check if it was pure. Every trade began with an argument about the money until Lydia's king Elias had an idea that changed the world. He fixed the weight of small metal lumps and stamped each one with a lion, the royal seal. That stamp was a promise from the crown. The lion told any trader, even one who couldn't read a word, that the king himself stood behind the metal. This lump is worth what we stamp on it. No weighing, no biting. His son Croesus went further, minting the first pure gold and silver coins with a value the crown could guarantee. When Persia conquered Lydia around 546 BC, they took the coins and carried them across the whole ancient world. The genius wasn't the metal, it was that you could trust a stranger's money without trusting the stranger, and you might think the coin ended the story. It didn't. Jump ahead to medieval England, where the royal treasury ran on wood. For 700 years, the English government recorded its debts on notched wooden sticks called tallies. A cut the width of your thumb meant 100 pounds, and a thinner notch meant less. They split the stick down the middle, and each side kept half. Matched later, the grain proved the debt was real, and people spent those sticks. A half stick that said the king owes you 10 pounds could be spent and traded like cash. Half the wealth of England was a pile of sticks. One kept half was called the stock, which is where we get the words stocks and shares. England scrapped the whole system in 1826. In 1834, officials told workers to burn 2 cartloads of the old sticks in a furnace under Parliament. The fire got loose. The money England had trusted for centuries burned down Parliament. Nobody wanted the stick for the wood, they wanted the promise carved into it. Nowhere is it clearer than on a tiny Pacific island. In 1903, an American anthropologist named William Henry Furness sailed to a tiny island in the Pacific called Yap. The people there used the strangest money on earth, giant stone discs, some taller than a man, some weighing thousands of pounds. They were far too heavy to move, so when a stone changed owners, nobody carried it. The whole island agreed it belonged to someone new. A stone's worth wasn't only its size, it grew with its story. A stone that had cost lives to carry across the sea was worth the most of all. Then Furness heard about one particular stone. Generations back, a crew was hauling it home by sea when a storm hit and sank it to the ocean floor. No one ever saw it again. And yet everyone on Yap agreed that stone was still real. It was still owned. Its family spent it for years, a whole fortune resting in the dark at the bottom of the sea. Later, German officials wanted the islanders to fix the roads, so they painted black crosses on the stones to seize them. The islanders fixed the roads to win their money back, and it had never moved an inch. The economist Milton Friedman found this so revealing about money that he wrote a whole essay on it in 1991. The money was never the stone, it was the island's shared agreement about it. And that is the thing about money nobody ever tells you. We didn't invent it to make trading easier. We invented it to keep score of who we trust. Every clay tablet, every split stick, every sunken stone runs the same quiet trick. A group of people agreeing to remember the same debt. The clay, the wood, and the stone were only where the memories sat, if that sounds too primitive to be about you. Look at 1932. That year, France got nervous about American gold and asked for its share back. So the Federal Reserve in New York walked down into its own vault and found the gold. Then it slid the same bars into a different cage inside the same vault and labeled them France's. The gold never left the building. A modern superpower had done the same thing as an island, moving a stone too heavy to carry, which brings us back to this morning. When you tapped your card, no gold moved. No silver, no stone. A number on one screen dropped and a number on another rose. You moved a promise, and everyone in the system agreed it counted. That tap was the same act as a farmer in Ur pressing a debt into clay, the same act as a family on Yap spending a stone at the bottom of the sea. 5,000 years of history, moving through your thumb. Money was never the thing in your hand. It was always the trust between you and everyone else. And now you can feel it move.